Tennessee picks up a big one, a four-star prospect that certainly fits into Josh Heupel's scheme. What receiver really doesn't? But what were your thoughts on Tennessee picking up J.J. Harrell after a weekend of a lot of recruiting action in terms of camps? And there was an Under Armour camp, and there were a lot of contact that I think technically it's a dead period, but you can still Facebook and Twitter message people, even though you can't text them, which is always the dumbest rule ever. But J.J. Harrell of Mississippi became the Vols' fifth commitment of the 2024 class. You can read more about it on offthehooksports.com. Don't forget to download the app. It is available on Apple and Android. What do you think of J.J. Harrell?
I think this is significant because let's not forget what happened with Mazeo Bennett last year, who was a four-star receiver in the 2024 class, was committed. Tennessee loses to South Carolina. Alex Golesh leaves. Mazeo Bennett's from South Carolina. He decommits, and he commits to South Carolina. So I think this is a decent pickup to offset that. I mean, you get a guy from Lane Kiffin's backyard, and it ain't like Lane Kiffin isn't a selling point for receivers too, given his offense.
True.
And so that's a solid pickup. I think that it looks like he's going to play more wideout. We're talking 6'2", 185 right now. You could probably see him get to 6'3", 6'4 maybe and hit the 200-pound mark by the time he gets to college. Again, I would assume wideout, but, Tennessee just added Dante Thornton, and he's a 6'4 slot receiver. And so which is crazy to think about. I think, again, just a side note, I don't think we realize how amazing Dante Thornton could be this year. But outside of that, this guy looks like he's more of a wideout. Josh Heupel, it's funny. Heupel likes to, and I prefer the system too, likes to run he likes two go-to guys, maybe 2 to 3 at a time. You don't want 5 to 6 receivers in a rotation all getting 500 yards. He wants one guy getting 1,000, another guy getting 800, and another getting 700 on the season. But he has a lot of similar profile wideouts in that 6'2", 6'3 range. And, I mean, there's not going to be room for all of them in a couple of years. So the question becomes who's going to transfer out once Ramel Keaton, Brew McCoy, and those guys are gone. And I'm still not sure of that.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you this question, and I've got it on our message board too. Tennessee picking up J.J. Harrell is blank. Pick a word, pick a word to fill in that sentence. Tennessee picking up J.J. Harrell is blank.
I'm going to say impressive. And for me, the story is more they got an elite receiver out of Mississippi away from Lane Kiffin. And I think that, I know you talked about Ole Miss and what they can and can't recruit, but with Lane Kiffin, you think that they'd be able to keep elite offensive weapons in the state of Mississippi and go into Ole Miss. And
you certainly wouldn't think he'd be out of the running in late February.
Exactly. A year away, with signing day a year away, him out of the running. So I say impressive that Josh Heupel could do that, quite honestly.
John says epic. Travis says unexpected. All right, Travis, this is me being glass is 3/4 full. Tennessee picking up Harrell is routine. And here's why I say routine. They're picking up the 4-star guys via the transfer portal at receiver. They're able to dominate other teams in terms of their passing game. Receivers are going to want to come to that. Smoky Mountain Red says proof that Heupel is building something. I think we're further down the road than that, Smoky Mountain Red. I'll be real honest with you. I think that this is routine. I think beating a Georgia and beating an Alabama for a receiver, if it's not routine already, it's going to be, because we talked about who they hired as their offensive coordinators. They're not going to break the mold. And Mike Bobo and what they're doing in Alabama, they're trying to revert back to a pro style. This is going to be routine. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, Tennessee will pick up another 4-star receiver in this class. I believe very firmly in that, maybe 2 more if they want them. They'll at some point pick up a big transfer that we'll all get excited about, and you should. When it comes to receivers, Tennessee picking up this type of player is routine. Caleb, what do you think of that?
I think you're right. I didn't think about it that way, but they've been securing elite receivers over the past 2 years at will now. with however they want. So I'm with you. I think at this point it is routine. And so this year's going to be interesting because this year's going to be the first year where the primary weapons at receiver are mostly guys that Josh Heupel signed, excuse me. Cedric Tillman was a Jeremy Pruitt recruit and Jalen Hyatt was a Jeremy Pruitt recruit. So we're going to see this year, Brew McCoy, transfer Josh Heupel went after. Dante Thornton, the transfer he went after. Squirrel White, a Josh Heupel recruit. The only one that he didn't sign among this crew is Ramel Keaton. So this is going to be interesting to watch this year to see what happens with the guys he's targeted over the past few years.
And I gotta tell you this too. More so from the attitude standpoint, but just from, or more so from the playing standpoint, I think the attitude standpoint changes. When I talk to guys like we do with Cooper Mays and Jacob Warren, and I talk to other guys that I just sense this optimism around this class. You mentioned Tillman. I'm not throwing Tillman under the bus, but he did not have the impact we thought. A lot of that was because of injuries, but he just didn't seem. There's a couple of times I thought the body language was good. We know what happened with Jeremy Banks. I think Tennessee gets an upgrade by indoctrinating these individual players into Josh Heupel's mindset more so than trying to transfer people over. I mean, let's face it, if you show up for Jeremy Pruitt and you realize that it's a total train wreck, you can't help but become a little bit jaded, Caleb.
Oh, I agree. You're absolutely right on that. And I mean, with that first year with Josh Heupel, you have to wonder, like, there is a little bit more of, I kind of got to just get mine and focus on the NFL at this point and focus on what I can do because there's nothing really to play for. Luckily, there are some football positions where you can do that. Cornerback is one of them. Cornerback is with Alontae Taylor. I'm not saying Alontae Taylor's that. I think Alontae Taylor very much cared about the team at Tennessee. He was a great guy, but I think with cornerback, that's a position where you just have to do your job. You don't really have to make any sacrifices for anybody. Safety, you got to make some sacrifices if you want the team to be good sometimes, which Trayvon Flowers did. On the receiver front, we talked about this. You're right. And Tillman and Hyatt are totally different in this way. Tillman's a guy that 1,000 yards he might have been able to get 1,000 yards in any similar type of system. I think last year Jalen Hyatt, that was all Josh Heupel scheming, all Josh Heupel, and so I think that these guys now that Heupel's recruited, it's going to be interesting to see where they kind of fall. He's going for a similar profile outside of Squirrel White. Dave, do you notice that Heupel's? I'm only invoking his name from an X's and O's standpoint, not a character standpoint. Heupel seems to be going the Hugh Freeze route, where he really wants the bigger receivers across the board.
Maybe. Hugh Freeze always judged a player by his ankles. He always wanted to see ankles. I know that sounds incredibly weird and creepy, but it kind of sounds like a Rex Ryan thing with the feet? But it's not that. He wanted to see the size of their ankles and how big that they could grow into. So maybe Josh Heupel is evaluating ankles. But Tennessee in their 2024 class, it's 8th overall. And Jonathan Eccles, the athlete out of IMG Academy. Again, I can't tell you how important it is to have a tie into there. Is the highest rated prospect, just above Harrell, wide receiver out of North Panola High School. Then Caleb Beasley, who obviously had a tie to Tennessee with his was it brother or cousin's brother, correct?
I thought it was cousin. Is it brother?
Is it cousin? Cousin.
I could look it up. I'm not sure about that. So
out of Lipscomb Academy in Nashville is another 4-star, Marcus Corey Jr. out of Cleveland, Tennessee, another 4-star. So right now, Tennessee has 5 commitments for the 2024 class, and 4 of them are 4 stars. Then Carson Gentle out of Macaulay School here in Chattanooga is a 3-star prospect. So Tennessee's off to a fantastic start, and I can't imagine it slowing down anytime soon, because I think they're going to have a fantastic season this year, and I just don't foresee them not having a class that's knocking on the door of a top 5 class, barring something insano happens